Shah, Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahweh Shah.
I beheld till the thrones were cast down, and the Ancient of Days did sit, whose garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head like the pure wool. His throne was like the fiery flame, and his wheels as burning fire. A fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. Thousands ministered unto him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The judgment was set. The books were opened.
I saw in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven, and came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. And there was given him dominion and glory, and a kingdom, that all people, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away, and his kingdom that which shall not be destroyed. Psalm 110. The Lord said unto my Lord, Sit thou at my right hand, until I make thine enemies thy footstool. The Lord shall send the rod of thy strength out of Zion. Rule thou in the midst of thine enemies. Thy people shall be willing in the day of thy power. In the beauties of holiness from the womb of the morning, thou hast the dew of thy youth. The Lord hath sworn, and will not repent. Thou art a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. The Lord at thy right hand shall strike through kings in the day of his wrath. He shall judge among the heathen. He shall fill the places with the dead bodies. He shall wound the heads over many countries. He shall drink of the brook in the way. Therefore shall he lift up the head.
Barakatah Yahweh Shah, Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahweh Shah.
All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I would like to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, by Hashem Yahweh Shah, by Hashem Kakodash. Double honors unto the apostles and the elders, GMS, who rule well, teach well, being great examples to his younger brothers, and peace and blessings, salutations to the hopeful elect out there pushing his word and truth, and in sincerity across the four winds, in the name of Yahweh by Hashem Yahweh Shah, pushing to get up out of here. Shalom to the hopeful elect, the believers, the listeners, whom have came back to the obedience of the scriptures through faith in Yahweh by Shem Al Shai. And what I want to get into today, is a continuation in the book of Samuel. All right, we made it to the 14th chapter, and we're going to see, this chapter, going to Jonathan. All right, Jonathan is going to be introduced, okay, in the narrative, and we're going to see that, Jonathan is cut, from a different cloth, than his father. All right, Jonathan, being a man of faith, in which we believe, Jonathan, is one of the elect of today, seeing as him and, King David, were close-knit friends. All right, as we continue on in this story, all right, we're going to go into that narrative. But so this is Jonathan coming on the scene, and you're going to see a mindset of faith, which is similar to, all right, the mindset of faith of our forefathers, as we compare, accounts, of our forefathers, and you see similarities, all right, when it comes to the faith, all right, that our forefathers had in the time of distress, okay. Now, King Saul is pretty much, falling out of favor with the Most High. He made a sacrifice, that was meant for Samuel to make. All right, he was impatient, and a lot of men, began to waver, at King Saul's leadership, so his numbers have dwindled, and he's in the middle of this war with the Philistines, okay? So all eyes are against Israel at this moment, but once again, we know all it takes, is a little faith to turn things, in our favor, okay? So you read the book of 1 Samuel 14:1, it says, One day Jonathan said to his armor bearer, Come on, let's go over to where the Philistines have their outposts. But Jonathan did not tell his father what he was doing. Meanwhile, Saul and his 600 men were camped on the outskirts of Gibeah around the pomegranate tree at Migron. Among Saul's men was Ahijah the priest, who was wearing the ephod and the priestly vest. Ahijah was son of Ichabod's brother, Ahitub, son of Phinehas, son of Eli, the priest of the Lord who had served at Shiloh. No one realized that Jonathan had left the Israelite camp to reach the Philistine outpost. Jonathan had to go down between two rocky cliffs that were called Bozez and Sini. The cliff of the north, and it's similar to the Straight Gate, those two rocky cliffs, where they would have to maneuver, and get to the camp of the Philistines. It was a kind of a difficult path, but on the other side was a victory, which we're going to get into. It said the cliff of the north was in front of Michmash, and the one on the south was in front of Geba. Let's go across the outposts of those pagans, Jonathan said to his armor bearer. Perhaps the Lord will help us, for nothing can hinder the Lord Yahweh B'Shem Al-Shai. He can win a battle, all right, whether he has many warriors or only a few. So Jonathan's mindset was pure faith. Okay, he didn't care about the numbers. He knew that the Lord was with him. All right, victory was guaranteed. Okay, that's the spirit that, Caleb and Joshua had. Okay, they didn't care about the size, of the people that was in the land of Canaan as we was coming into the promised land. The size of those people didn't matter. All right, they had the mindset that the Lord was with them. They was good. You see, and we're seeing Jonathan, just showcase pure faith, in Yahweh B'Shem Al-Shai, and that faith is going to be rewarded. So let's get some accounts, that display that similar mindset when you get 1 Maccabees chapter 1. I started at 13. Now this is an account dealing with Judas. Okay, Maccabees, and this what they call the Maccabean revolt. All right, when you had, the family of priests, and other men, that was gathered too. All right, this family of priests called the Hasmoneans. Okay, and they revolted against, the Greek, all right, authority of their time. All right, these Edomites. Now it says, now when Saron, this 1 Maccabees 3:13 says, now when Saron, a prince of the army of Syria, heard say that Judas had gathered unto him a multitude in a company of the faithful to go out with him to war, he said, I will get me a name and honor in the kingdom. I will go fight with Judas and them that are with him, who despise the king's commandments. So this Edomite, okay, because it says, a prince of the army of Syria, okay, a leader, a captain of the army of Syria, which at that time the Seleucid Empire, reigned in what we call Syria today, okay, which were Edomite, the Greeks at this time. All right, so his mindset is that he's gonna make himself famous by defeating Judas, because Judas, began to gain fame, for his victories over these in these battles with the Greeks. It says, all right, speaking of Saron, so he made him ready to go up, and there went with him a mighty host of the ungodly to help him and to be avenged of the children of Israel. And when he came near to the going up of Betharon, Judas went forth to meet him with a small company, who, when they saw the host coming to meet them, said unto Judas, how shall we be able, being so few, to fight against so great multitude and so strong, seeing we are ready to faint with fasting all this day? Unto whom Judas answered, it is not hard. All right, so as the men that was with Judas, seeing they was outnumbered, they had, not being able to eat, because of circumstances. And this is the response of Judas. It says, unto whom Judas answered, it is no hard matter for many to be shut up in the hands of a few, and with the Most High of heaven, with the power of heaven, it is all one to deliver with a great multitude or a small company. For the victory of battle standeth not in the multitude of an host, but strength coming from heaven. And see, this is just their mindset of anything is possible with the Most High that our forefathers will have, man. You know, just as Jonathan said, the Lord can deliver a few, all right, and can deliver a victory of the few, you know, over many. Okay, and these are the circumstances that we're in now. Okay, and we have to go into Jacob's trouble with his mindset, knowing that anything is possible, man. You know, we're gonna be in situations to where odds are going to be against us. It's not going to make, okay, mathematical sense. You know, it's not going to make human sense. Okay, but in Yahweh Bashim Al-Shai, anything is possible, man. And this is why we have these accounts, man, to draw from. You know, and it says, for the victory of the battle standing not in the multitude of an host, but the strength coming from heaven. They come against us in much pride and iniquity to destroy us, and our wives and our children to spoil us. But we fight for our lives and our laws, wherefore the Lord himself will overthrow them before our face. And as for you, be ye not afraid of them. Now as soon as he had left off speaking, he leapt suddenly upon them. So Saran and his host was overthrown before him. Okay? So the Lord rewarded, you know, the faith of Judas, okay, in this situation. Just as he's going to reward the faith of Jonathan, man. And Lord will, our faith is rewarded in this time, man, as we come into these circumstances, you know, being against all odds, man. Okay? Let's go to another account in the book of Judges. Then we'll go back to Samuel. You see? This is the book of Judges, chapter 7. All right. Now it says, Judges 7:1. It says, so Jerubbaal, that is Gideon, and his army got up early and went as far as the spring of Harod. The armies of Midian were camped north of them in the valley near the hill of Morah. The Lord Yahweh Bashim Al-Shai said to Gideon, you have too many warriors with you. If I let all of you fight the Midianites, the Israelites will boast to me that they saved themselves by their own strength. So the Lord told Gideon, look, you got too many people with you. You got too many warriors with you. You know, if y'all win this battle, you know, you're going to boast in yourselves. Okay? Because the Lord shows his power, all right, when the odds are stacked against us, man. You know, as Apostle Paul said, his strength is made perfect in our weakness, man. Okay? Verse 3 says, therefore, tell the people, whoever is timid or afraid may leave this mountain and go home. So 22,000 of them went home, leaving only 10,000 who were willing to fight. But the Lord Yahweh Bashim Al-Shai told Gideon, there are still too many. Bring them down to the spring, and I will test them to determine who will go with you and who will not. So the Lord is still diminishing, you know, Gideon's numbers, okay, because the Lord is finna show power, okay? So we have to have a mindset of the odds being against us is not us being set up for failure, okay? The odds being against us is the Lord getting ready to showcase power, man, you know, in the situation. Verse 5, when Gideon took his warriors down to the water, the Lord Yahweh Bashim Al-Shai told him, divide the men into two groups. In one group, put all those who cup water in their hands and lap it up with their tongues like dogs. In the other group, put all those who kneel down and drink with their mouths in the stream. So you had those, you know, who drank, you know, from a cup, made in their hand a cup, and they put it in the water, and they put the water to their face so they can still be aware, you know, so they can still look around and be circumspect. But you had men that kneel all the way down into the water, okay, with their face, you know, directly in the water, drinking it. Those men weren't being circumspect, you know. So that's how the Lord separated to the last cut, the last number of men he was going to give Gideon. It says only 300 of the men drank from their hands. All the others got down on their knees and drank with their mouths in the stream. The Lord told Gideon, with these 300 men, I will rescue you and give you victory over the Midianites, send all the others home. So Gideon collected the provisions and the ram's horn and the other warriors and sent them home, but he kept the 300 men with him. The Midianite camp was in the valley just below Gideon. So the Lord used, those 300 men to give Gideon, all right, the victory, all right, to give Israel the victory over the Midianites, man. Okay, and that was the Lord showcasing his power, man, showing that he is. Okay, the numbers don't factor in to the Lord. All right, your military, technology doesn't factor, all right, into the Lord's, all right, algorithm when he wants a victory for his people, man. So we've seen this same account in the book of 1 Samuel 14 dealing with Jonathan, man. Okay, so verse 6 says, let's go across the outpost. I read verse 5. 1 Samuel 14:5 said, the cliff on the north was in front of Michmash, and the one on the south was in front of Gilboa. Let's go across the outposts of those pagans, Jonathan said to his armor bearer. Perhaps the Lord will help us, for nothing can hinder the Lord, Yahweh Bashim Shai. He can win the battle with whether he has many warriors or only a few. Okay, and we just read, several accounts, where the Lord will do that. Okay, and like I said, we're in that same position today, man. So we don't look at, Esau and his technology and what he's capable of doing in the flesh. We look at he is, man. Okay, we serve a power, okay, that's beyond, okay, any power that these heathens have access to, man. Okay, the Lord has reserved the power for his people that these heathens not gonna be able to do nothing with, man. Beginning with Esau, Edom. Okay, which is the strength of the heathen today. It said, do what you think is best. The armor bearer replied, I'm with you completely, whatever you decide. All right, then, Jonathan told him, we will cross over and let them see us. If they say to us, stay where you are, or we'll kill you, then we will stop and not go up to them. But if they say, come up on and fight, then we will go up. That will be the Lord's sign that he will help us and defeat them. When the Philistines saw them coming, they shouted, look, the Hebrews are crawling out of their holes. Then the men from the outpost shouted to Jonathan, come up here and we'll teach you a lesson. Come on, climb right behind me, Jonathan said to his armor bearer. So that was the signal that the Lord was going to get them the victory. So Jonathan, he was like, hell yeah, told the armor bearer, follow me. It says, for the Lord will help us defeat them. So they climbed up using both hands and feet, and the Philistines fell before Jonathan and his armor bearer, all right, killed those who came behind them. They killed some 20 men in all, and their bodies were scattered over about half an acre. So you had 2 on 20, so it was real like on some John Wick type, with a sword, and it shows you that Esau get those martial arts movies and those scenes where one man is running through a lot of people. He gets that from the scriptures, man, because this is what Jake was doing, and the Lord was with him. Well, you had one man, all right, that was able to defeat multitudes of men, all right, which we're just gonna go on to another level when we get to the time of King David, and you want to read about his mighty men. It says, verse 15 says, suddenly panic broke out in the Philistine army, both in the camp and in the field, including even the outposts and the raiding parties. And just then an earthquake struck, and everyone was terrified. Saul's lookouts in Gibeah and Benjamin saw a strange sight. The vast army of the Philistines began to melt away in every direction. Call the roll and find out who's missing, Saul ordered. When they checked, they found that Jonathan and his armor bearer were gone. So now what's happening is, the Philistines, all right, are now shook, because, they're seeing that the Lord left, those 20 men, scrolled out, across a half an acre, which is about half of a football field, and the Philistines are seeing that, and it struck, fear in the Philistines camp. Because remember, the Most High is the power of war, and part of war is psychology, man. Psychology plays a major factor in war. Okay, that's why you will have, you know, certain, wars. All right, the opposing army when they would defeat, okay, the opposing militaries. Well, that was just a battle. So what they would do, they would put the bodies on stake. They would hang the bodies in trees. So the warriors coming behind them, they would see that, and it would do something to their psyche, man. Because major part of war is psychological, man. Okay? It says, call the roll and find out who's missing, Saul ordered. And when they checked, they found that Jonathan and his armor bearer were gone. Then Saul shouted to Ahijah, bring the ephod here. For at that time, Ahijah was wearing the ephod in front of the Israelites. But while Saul was talking to the priests, the confusion in the Philistine camp grew louder and louder. So Saul said to the priest, never mind, let's get going. Then Saul and all his men rushed out to the battle and found the Philistines killing each other. There was terrible confusion everywhere, man. And see, we're finna see this on a large scale, man. Okay? We're finna see these Edomites begin to kill each other in this Third World War. Okay? These European nations, America, Russia. Okay? And the scriptures go into that when you get this here. All right? Let's get this in Haggai. So the Philistines began, they was killing each other. There was confusion. They was probably thinking about, okay, someone, sold us out. Somebody is, working with Israel, But however it played out, the Lord had them fighting against each other. He had the Midianites fighting against each other. When you go into the account with the 300. The Midianites, you read the rest of that account in Judges chapter 7. Okay, in verse 8, those Midianites fought each other, man. He did the same thing with the Syrians. Now we're finna see Esau Edom. He's finna put these devils in the spirit to fight against each other, man. Okay? This is Haggai 2:22. It says, I will overthrow royal thrones and destroy the power of foreign kingdoms. Okay? And this is what the Lord is getting ready to do. And see, the Lord has it with these nations. Esau finna shoot nukes on themselves, man. America shooting nukes at Russia, and Russia shooting nukes at America. Those are Edomites shooting nukes at each other, man. Okay? The EU shooting nukes at America. Russia shooting nukes at the EU. Those are Edomites shooting nukes at each other. You see? So the Lord has this same narrative playing out again. It's just on a much bigger scale now. Okay? It said, I will overturn their chariots and riders. The horses will fall, and their riders, all right, will kill each other. Okay? We finna have, these what you call these dog fights. These Russian jets going against American jets. Okay? EU jets going against Russia jets. Okay? We finna have, a all-out brawl, and these Edomites finna go at it, man. World War I, World War II was Esau fighting over who was going to be, all right, the head of this Edomite kingdom, man. This is what World War I and II was about. Okay? Establishing, what sect, all right, of Edomites, is going to rule, all right, this kingdom. And it landed in the West. Okay, with the EU, America, and NATO. Okay? So World War III is going to be a brawl. These devils are going to fight over, all right, this digital world order that they're trying to set up. Okay? So let's go get that in Matthew, which is how Shai spoke on that. Now the book of Mark. Maybe verse 3. It's the book of Mark, chapter 3, and verse 24. And it says, if a kingdom be divided against itself, that kingdom cannot stand. And if a house be divided against itself, that house cannot stand. And if Satan rise up against himself, all right, and be divided, he cannot stand but have an end. So So we're in the end of these devils, man, because we know that they're divided. Okay, they're gonna, agree to a point. Okay, but you best believe all these devils have all type of treachery planned against one another as they get close to establishing this new world order, man. Okay, and it's gonna play out in these devils shooting nukes on one another, with the bulk of the nukes coming to America, man, to turn this place to a desert. Okay, now let's go back to 1 Samuel 14. All right. And 20, it says, Then Saul and all his men rushed out to the battle and found the Philistines killing each other. There was terrible confusion everywhere. Even the Hebrews who had previously gone over to the Philistine army, you had sellouts. Jake was turncoat back then, all right? It was part of the ranks of the Philistines, which you got Israelites in America's military, in the European military today. It's going to fight against the Lord. All right. And it says, and joined in with Saul, Jonathan, and the rest of the Israelites. Likewise, the men of Israel who were hiding in the hill country of Ephraim joined the chase when they saw the Philistines. All right. Yep. It said, when they saw the Philistines running away. So the Lord saved Israel that day, and the battle continued to rage even beyond Beth-aven. Now the men of Israel were pressed to exhaustion that day, because Saul had placed them under an oath, saying, Let a curse fall on anyone who eats before evening, before I have full revenge on my enemies. So no one ate anything at all. Okay, so the Lord gave, Israel the victory, through the faith of Jonathan. So the Jonathan's victory was rewarded. Now here we go to Saul. Well, this is a horrible call in the middle of a war, to call a fast, man. Okay, a voluntarily fast, because you read in the time of Maccabees, well, they was on the run. They didn't have access to food like that. Okay, because they was on the move as they was fighting, the Greeks. Now here it is, Saul, his camp, as you read in the beginning, they're camped under, a pomegranate tree. But because Saul made a decree, they're not even eating the pomegranates, and they're in the middle of war. This is a terrible call, as a leader. Okay, to call a fast in the middle of a war that you, all right, have the odds against you, man. Okay, it says, even though they had all found honeycomb on the ground in the forest, they didn't dare touch the honey, because they all feared the oath they had taken. But Jonathan had not heard his father's command, and he dipped the end of his stick into a piece of honeycomb and ate the honey. After he had eaten, he felt refreshed, showing you the quality of food back then. You can just take a table, spoon of honey, and be refreshed, showing you how potent the food was. It says, but one of the men saw him and said, Your father made the army take a strict oath that anyone who eats food today will be cursed. That is why everyone is weary and faint. My son has made trouble for us all. Jonathan exclaimed, A command like that only hurts us. See how refreshed I am now that I have eaten this little bit of honey. So Jonathan pretty much like this, he pretty much, that's not wise. That only hurts, okay, us in the circumstance that we in, okay? And that was King Saul being over righteous, man. The scripture say, be not over righteous. Why should thou destroy thyself? Okay? You read that in, I believe it's the book of Ecclesiastes chapter 7 and 16. Yep, it says, be not over righteous much. Okay? Neither make thyself over wise. Why shouldest thou destroy thyself, man? And that's why even today, as we rehearse the righteous acts, we got to understand we're not in the setup to keep the law perfectly. First, in these bodies, you're not going to keep the law perfectly. And in this setup, you're not going to keep the law perfectly, man. And we do what we can as much as we can, and we constantly get better. All right. But there's certain situations where you can try to apply a law and then be a harm to your situation, man. It put you in a bad situation, you know. So you can't be over righteous, man. All right. And this is an example of Saul, because fasting is not wicked, but fasting in this moment in the middle of a heated, battle, all right, is a terrible idea. Okay. And it could cause a lot of men to be destroyed. Okay. So let's go back here. 1 Samuel, all right, 14 and 30. It says, if the men had been allowed to eat freely from the food they found among our enemies, think how many more Philistines we could have killed. They chased and killed the Philistines all day from Michmash to Ajalon, growing more and more faint. That evening they rushed for the battle, plundered and butchered the sheep, goats, cattle, and cows, but they ate them without draining the blood. So Jake is just eating meat raw. Jake is starving at this point. You gotta understand, you're chasing people, okay? I mean, you know how much, calories and carbs you're burning, in the war, in the battle. So at this point they're starving. So Jake is eating, raw meat. Someone reported to Saul, look, the men are sinning against the Lord by eating meat that still has blood in it. This is very wrong, Saul said. Find a large stone and roll it over here. All right. Now Saul doesn't have, because Saul wasn't a bright guy. When you study Saul, he had some some dunce moments. Okay. And he doesn't realize, like, damn, maybe I should just let him eat. Like, my decree is causing this effect amongst my men. Okay. Now I'm causing them to sin by eating raw meat. Okay. So let's take that decree back. Let's rethink that. Okay. But he doesn't have that awareness, man. As a leader, says someone reported to Saul, look, the men are sinning against the Lord by eating meat that still has blood in it. That is very wrong, Saul said. Find a large stone and roll it over here. Then go out among the troops and tell them to bring the cattle, sheep, and goats here to me. Kill them and drain the blood before you eat them. Do not sin against the Lord by eating meat with the blood still in it. So that night all the troops brought the animals and slaughtered them there. Then Saul built an altar to the Lord. It was the first of the altars he built to the Lord Yahweh B'Shem Al-Shai, which he wasn't, authorized to build no altar. Okay? It said, then Saul said, let's chase the Philistines all night and plunder them till sunrise. Let's destroy every last one of them. His men replied, we'll do whatever you think is best. But the priest said, let's ask the Most High first. So Saul asked the Most High, should we go after the Philistines? We will help you. Will you help us defeat them? But the Most High made no reply that day. Then Saul said to the leaders, something's wrong. I want all my army commanders to come here. We must find out what sin was committed today. I vow by the name of the Lord who rescued Israel that the sinner will surely die, even if it's my own son Jonathan, but no one will tell him what the trouble was. Then Saul said, Jonathan and I will stand over here, and all of you stand over there. And the people responded to Saul, whatever you think is best. Then Saul prayed, O Lord, power of Israel, please show us who is guilty and who is innocent. Then they cast sacred lots, and Jonathan and Saul were chosen as the guilty ones, and the people were declared innocent. So Saul and Jonathan were declared the guilty ones, and the people were declared the innocent. Then Saul said, now cast lots again and choose between me and Jonathan. And Jonathan was shown to be the guilty one. Tell me what you have done, Saul demanded of Jonathan. I tasted a little honey. Jonathan admitted, it was only a little bit on the end of my stick. Does that deserve death? Yes, Jonathan. Saul said, you must die. May the Most High strike me and even kill me if you do not die, all right, for this. But the people broke in, all right, and said to Saul, Jonathan has won this great victory for Israel. Should he die? Far from it. As surely as the Lord lives, not one hair on his head will be touched, for the Most High helped him do a great deed today. So the people rescued Jonathan, and he was not put to death. And this shows you Saul, his wherewithal wasn't there, man. Because here it is in the previous chapter, when the Lord put the spirit on Saul to defeat the Philistines, and you had Jakes that wanted to kill those men that spoke up against, Saul being king. He let those men make it, But here it is, his son, all right, acted in faith, all right, and got the victory. The Lord used him to get a victory. And because he ate a little honey, Saul was getting ready to put his son to death, man. Okay, showing you that his judgment skills just weren't keen like that. His discernment, his decision making was not on point. So you start to see the flaws, in Saul as we continue to read, in these chapters, man. But then it shows you that the Lord has the last say so, because the Lord intervened and repealed that death sentence that King Saul wanted to give to Jonathan, man. Just as the Lord is going to intervene on our behalf, man. We seen that with the book of Susanna, okay? As she was going to be sentenced to death, but the Lord used Daniel, to intervene, okay? So we're going to be in times, man, where we might get a death sentence and the Lord might repeal it, or we might have to go all the way through with it, but either way, it's victory. That's the thing. That's the beautiful thing about the elect of Israel. We have the victory. Lord willing, we have that number. Either way it go, It said, then Saul called back the army from chasing the Philistines, and the Philistines returned home. Now when Saul had secured his grasp on Israel's throne, he fought against his enemies in every direction, against Moab, Ammon, Edom, and the kings of Zobah, and the Philistines. And wherever he turned, he was victorious, all right? Because the Lord, was using, Saul, King Saul, all right, in this moment still. Even though he was rejected, all right, he was still using him to get victories, okay, over the heathen. It says he performed great deeds and conquered Amalekites, okay, saving Israel from all those who had plundered them. Saul's son included Jonathan, Ishbosheth, and Maakashah. He also had two daughters, Merab, who was older, and Michal. Saul's wife was Ahinoam, and the daughter of Ahimaaz. The commanders of Saul's army was Abner, the son of Saul's uncle, Ner. Okay, so Abner was his cousin. Saul's father Kish and Abner's father Ner were both sons of Abiel. The Israelites fought constantly with the Philistines throughout Saul's life. So whenever Saul observed a young man who was brave and strong, he drafted him into his army, which the Lord said that's what a king would do. Okay, so that's the point. You don't want to get into that 1 Samuel 14th chapter. So Lord will, we just continue on, going through the book of Samuel, and it be edifying. So Lord will, you brothers, all right, and you sisters, edified. Till next time, my